Hello, everybody. Sorry I wasn't able to come on earlier tonight. Sorry I wasn't able to come on earlier today. But Bonnie and I had a number of things to do, and I really couldn't get into a position of being able to stream until this evening sometime. And when I did get into position to stream, of course, it was almost time for the debate between John Fetterman and Dr. Oz at 8 p.m. Well, I sat through the debate, which, of course, for anyone who had been watching the race, okay, and who believes in the kinds of things that I believe in, that debate was very disappointing. John Fetterman was not yet ready to debate in the kind of rapid file format that we saw there. He was not in shape, but to be able to answer questions in a minute or to answer questions in 15 seconds, which were the time formats of the debate. And he wasn't ready to put his thoughts together in a truly coherent way. Now, we know from the diagnosis, okay, that affected him, that was not a matter of a cognitive problem, but was a matter of a speech problem. And you saw the speech problem all throughout this debate. But since he knew he had the speech problem, he probably should have canceled out at the last minute, okay, on the debate. I know that if that would have looked, okay, extremely bad, but what happened actually during the debate also looked extremely bad from the viewpoint of somebody winning debaters' points, of someone winning a debate from a technical point of view. Hello, Teresa. Very nice to see you. Hello, Dolores. Great to see you. Hi, Kay. And thank you. Kay says, but Fetterman did the best he could. He did. He did, and everybody ought to respect him for that. But at the same time, John Fetterman was simply incapable of doing that kind of a debate. Okay, what they should have done for this debate is they should have insisted on a Lincoln Douglas type of debate, where the debaters make their statements and they have some criticism of the statements. They're allowed to make statements which are fairly lengthy. Okay, and then to debate each other in a fairly lengthy way. I think Fetterman needed that his progress in overcoming his stroke was not sufficient to do the kind of rapid fire format that this debate was set in. Okay, let me tell you why I think who won this debate should not matter. Now, I'm sure everybody was disappointed in John's performance. I was certainly disappointed in John's performance. But as soon as the debate ended, we made a small contribution to his campaign. That was all we could afford. If we were able to be more generous, we would have been more generous. Not because he won the debate, not because he performed well, but because, out of respect for the people of Pennsylvania, he did actually debate. The reason why I think who won does not make a difference is because I think very strongly that what matters, not in terms of the debate, but what matters when you're going into the voting booth, if you intend to vote, is what are your choices and who comes closest to being able to support the policies that you want to see while in office. That's an important question. Another important question is looking at the party context of each candidate. You have to ask yourself the question, what will his or her party allow the candidate to do while in office? And is the candidate's stated position on things in conflict with the party's position? And if it is in conflict with the party's commission, would the candidate have the integrity to go along with his own position and with the promises he was making to his would-be constituents? Or would he fold to the party leadership? Those questions are very important, but to answer. They are how you should evaluate competing candidates. But if you're going to make a decision, in the first presentation for Empowering Democracy, we put forward the categories of public purpose. They are criteria for evaluation of policies. They can also be used as ways of evaluating candidates. In relation to candidates, you can ask questions like this. You can say, which of the candidates is closest to supporting the kinds of policies that would create a dynamic economy in which all can prosper, especially the heavy majority of the people in the middle and working classes? Which of the candidates is closest to be able to support the goal of creating economic justice? Which of the candidates is likely to support what has to be done to create trade for public purpose? Which of the candidates is closest to where that candidate has to be in order to support the policies we need to have supported to maximize equality? Which of the candidates is closest in terms of our belief that he or she is likely to support policies that lead to women's equality? which of the candidates is closest to supporting policies that can be used to create bottom-up democracy? Which of the candidates would be most able to support the policies we need to create environmental and ecological sustainability? Which of the candidates would be more likely to support policies we need to have to end the climate emergency? Which of the candidates are most likely to maximize free at the point of service healthcare, specifically Medicare for all? Which of the candidates would be most likely to maximize healthful nutrition and food production, distribution, and consumption? Which of the candidates would be most likely to help us to pass policies that would tend to end war among the nations? And finally, which of the candidates would be most likely to support the policies we need to develop, to innovate, and to assess new technology that we are trying to innovate? Those are criteria for evaluating candidates. They're criteria for evaluating policies. They're criteria that we ought to apply in making decisions about who we wish to vote for. Now, sometimes when we look at these criteria, we have to condition them by taking into account the parties in which the particular candidates happen to find themselves. Because even if we think a candidate is sincere in some particular point of policy and what they say about it, one very important issue is, would the party of that candidate, would they allow the candidate to support the policy position the candidate is stating? Or would they put so much pressure on the candidate that he or she would be likely to fold? Being likely to fold has to be evaluated from the standpoint of simply the character of the candidate and the degree of commitment the candidate would have to particular kinds, of policies. Now, the reason why I think the debate doesn't matter and that the performance in the debate doesn't really matter for one's political choice. Now, I'm not talking about whether it matters from the standpoint of impressing the audience or persuading the audience. I'm talking about, does it matter from the standpoint of persuading each of us as individuals to support them rather than the other candidates? And what I am saying is, as we go through these criteria, who do you think would be more likely to support policies that would create a dynamic economy? One that would be changing things and that would be likely to create the most prosperity for all of us. Would it be Oz or would it be Fetterman? Who has the greater commitment to changing the nature of the economy we have now? We have an economy now that is in stagflation. We have an economy now that's on the point of lurching into a recession. We have an economy now in which people won't act in a collective manner. We have an economy now in which people work for their own gain, but do not work for the collective gain of the United States and its particular citizens. Which of these two gentlemen are likely to work for an economy that will bring most of us prosperity, bring most of us security? Is it Oz or is it Fetterman? I don't have any doubt that it's John Fetterman, because he cares about people. He cares about the kind of economy I am talking about. What does Oz care about based on his record of what he's done and how he's acted over a period of time? He cared very much about getting wealthy for himself and his family. What has he done for other people? What has he done for the economy at large? Zip, zip, big zip. What about creating economic justice? Is Oz interested in that at all? Or is he interested in whether something is socialism or something is not? By the way, Oz accused Fetterman of advocating, of wanting, supporting socialized medicine. There's no indication of that in Fetterman's record. He recently shifted his position from basically supporting a public option in the healthcare area to supporting Medicare for all. Oz wants you to believe and is equating that a Medicare for all system is socialized medicine. That, my friends, is a lie. It is socialized insurance, but it is not socialized medicine. The hospitals would still be private. The doctors would still be private. The drug companies would still be private. The instrument makers would still be private. What is socialized is insurance, and even that is not completely socialized. The basics that everybody needs are socialized. Insurance, with respect to that, is socialized because the government is doing the funding. But the system itself is not socialized. It's still private, and in calling it socialized medicine, Oz is lying, as almost every single Republican that stands for office always lies. How about creating trade for public purpose? Has any Republican ever advocated for trade for public purpose? Ask the question, is this trade policy I'm putting in, is it good for everyone? Is it good for all the goals that most people have in this country? Or is it just good for the particular people doing the trading? In Oz's own head, there's never a conception of public purpose, because he's an extreme sort of individualist. How about when it comes to maximizing equality? Who would be more interested in that? Would it be Fetterman or would it be Oz? Is there any comparison with respect to that? How about women's equality? Would it be Fetterman or would it be Oz? How about creating bottom-up democracy? Would it be Fetterman or would it be Oz? Who would be more likely to support policies to maximize bottom-up democracy? Isn't it clear from Fetterman's campaigning and the way he treats people and the way he deals with people that he would be far better when it came to bottom-up democracy? How about creating environmental and ecological sustainability? I mean, Oz just wants a frack, okay, all over the place. Now, Fetterman has said he's for fracking too because he has in mind jobs in Pennsylvania, sure, and Pennsylvania can get a lot of oil up if they do fracking. But here's where party comes in. Most of the Democratic Party is not for fracking, they're for shifting away from fossil fuels and going to green energy. I think Fetterman would be for that too, but he'd also be for the fossil fuels and he'd also be for fracking. But he has to operate in the context of the Democratic Party. So, when it comes to the choice between he and Oz, we don't like it that Fetterman is for fracking. And if we had a better choice who wasn't for fracking, we'd like that better. But when it comes to the comparison of the two men, if Fetterman has an open mind on other sources of energy, and I believe he certainly does, he would be much more likely to support this transition to environmental and ecological sustainability, and much more likely to support ending the climate emergency as opposed to Oz. I mean, Oz just appears not even to give a rat's ass. I'll be polite in my language. He doesn't appear to give a rat's ass about the climate emergency. Now, Fetterman does certainly care about that. How about the area of maximizing free at the point of service healthcare, Medicare for all? Oz told us in this debate that he's not at all interested in that because that's socialism. So he's ideological about that. You can talk to him and you can point out that if we shifted to a Medicare for all system, we could cut in half the medical costs of this nation. And Oz wouldn't care because he'd say it's socialism. You could point out to him how the medical system would be much more equal for everybody and everybody would be served. And he wouldn't care about that because it's socialism. How about the area of maximizing healthful nutrition and food production, distribution, and consumption? Now, you might think on the surface that Oz would care more about that. But the problem is that Oz's care about health care is apparently conditioned by the private sector interests that he is connected to and that have contributed to his campaign. He's, of course, been criticized for selling various kinds of cures on television that don't work, okay, as advertised. That shows you that he doesn't care about maximizing healthful nutrition in food production, distribution, and consumption. How about ending war among nations? Has Oz put out a peep on that during the campaign? Now, I don't see Fetterman saying much about that either, but who do you think would be more amenable to collaborating with other progressives to help us end this war in Ukraine? I'm not saying Fetterman has pronounced about that. I'm not saying I expect him to be a leader when it comes to ending this particular war, but I think it's much more likely he would support that than Oz. Now, maybe Oz, in a certain context, would support that. For example, if Trump came into office, Oz would undoubtedly do what Trump tells him to do. So, if Trump wanted to end the war with Russia, Oz would probably follow him, okay, on that. And that's probably one area where he would be more in line with public purpose than Fetterman might be. But what Fetterman would do depends upon what happens generally in the Congress. So we don't really know how Fetterman would line up on that. Then we have the final area, developing, innovating, and assessing new technology. I think both candidates would probably be interested in that. But I think Oz would be interested in harnessing the new technology to private sector interests, okay, and purposes, because those would be the people funding his campaigns. Whereas Fetterman, who works with small dollar donations much more, would not be the captive of private interests with respect to this area. He would be looking to see what the best thing is to do from the point of view of public purpose. So, let me okay, let me get out of these slides right now. Hang on a second. Okay, there we go. Now comes a large question. Here is Fetterman and here is Oz. Okay, obviously, but Fetterman is not at full capacity right now. Given another 3 months, however, given another 2 months, he might be at full capacity or far closer to full capacity. Now, his doctor says that Fetterman can function as a senator now. So he may be all right now to function as a senator, but let's say he's not. There is the possibility that come January, he will be able to function. His doctor says he's going to get full functionality back. Let's say that he's elected and that in January he still can't talk straight, which is his problem. He can't talk straight. So let's say in January he can't talk straight. Okay. According to his doctor, he can think straight, which is what counts. But let's say he cannot talk straight, okay, in January, but he can think straight. Given that, and given what I've just said about his record and what he's most likely to approach, would you rather have a guy like Fetterman as a senator, given that he won't be able to talk straight in January or February? Or would you have a guy like Oz who's not going to support these various categories of public purpose? In that case, the fact that Oz can talk straight actually works against you, because he's going to talk straight to persuade you to accept other things that are not good for you. So let's say Fetterman stays that way and isn't able to talk straight for half of next year. So he finally decides to give up the ghost because he doesn't think he can be completely effective as a senator. And so he resigns. Right now, there's a test for governor in Pennsylvania. Josh Shapiro is the Democrat, and he's running against a guy by the name of Mastriano, who is an election denier and who is trying to fix the state level systems so that the state legislatures will be in the position of choosing who they want as a candidate for office. In other words, it won't be the votes that will determine the winner of an official contest. It will be the person the state legislature wants in there. That's what Doug Mastriano wants. He's going to support positions like that in the Senate. He was a supporter of the insurrection. Right now, the polls are showing Shapiro ahead, showing that Shapiro is likely to win. If Shapiro wins, then he's the governor. If Fetterman resigns, which is just about the worst that can happen under the scenario that I am giving you, then Josh Shapiro would be in a position to appoint a senator to fill out Fetterman's term. And that senator is likely to be someone who supports similar policies to Fetterman and Shapiro, both of whom are fairly progressive. So if we elect Fetterman now, that's the worst that can happen. We shouldn't be evaluating these two based on the fact that right now, Dr. Oz can communicate better than Fetterman. That's a temporary position. And what is Oz going to communicate? Lies, terrible policies, reasons why public purpose ought to be ignored. That's what Oz is going to communicate. Whereas at worst, what will happen to Fetterman is that he will fail to communicate well. But he is much more likely to vote in the right way, taking into account the framework of public purpose that I gave you, than Oz is, for as long as he's a senator. And if he has to get out of the Senate, the person appointed by Shapiro is much more likely to support the policies that the public purpose framework implies than Oz. So my point is, it's not a simple choice between Oz, and Fetterman. It's a choice between Oz right now and in the future, and Fetterman right now and in the future, or at the worst, it's a choice between Oz right now and in the future, and between Fetterman and some other progressive in the future. My point is that however it actually develops over the next year, we'll be better off if we vote for Fetterman now. And his performance in the debate had nothing to do with that. It should not affect your decision to vote for Fetterman, okay, or Oz, because it's a temporary condition. This is a 6-year term. It doesn't affect the policies that you are likely to see. So what I'm saying is, don't be affected by the events of tonight. If you think that Fetterman did a terrible job in terms of the debate, that should not matter. It doesn't affect how he's going to contribute to governance. And that is what we have to keep in mind. That is what counts. I made that point earlier when Lisa and I did a program on that. And I come back to that point. The Fetterman-Oz contest is not something we should stop fighting for, that we should get discouraged about. Instead, we need to fight even harder now, because we need to make sure that a man like Oz does not become the senator again. Because Oz is going to be much more, and perhaps even worse, than Senator Toomey has been for Pennsylvania. He's been a very bad senator for Pennsylvania. And Oz will be a very bad senator for Pennsylvania and for the United States at large. That's what we have to keep in mind. That is what this is about. So, by the way, Fetterman was asked here whether he would continue, whether he would support the filibuster. He said no. Oz said yes. Oz started singing the praises of the filibuster. Of course, the Republicans didn't think much of the filibuster when they got rid of the filibuster so that they could appoint members of the Supreme Court with just a majority vote. Then it was perfectly fine to be rid of the filibuster. So Oz's position on the filibuster was and is hypocritical. And the filibuster has no merit except to deny the will of the people. That's what's gotten us to this Supreme Court that denies the fundamental rights of women, the fundamental voting rights of Black Americans, or any other Americans that the party in power wants to disenfranchise. This court has attacked the voting rights of Americans. This court was illegitimately assembled because the Republicans would not allow a vote on Garland, on Merrick Garland. And as a result of that, we have Neil Gorsuch as a Supreme Court justice. That never would have happened if Garland had come up to a vote and would have been confirmed. Remember, Garland was the choice, of Obama, and the GOP said at the time, well, in the last year of the presidency, we shouldn't have a vote on a candidate for the Supreme Court. There was nothing like that in the Constitution. There was no precedent at all for that, but the Republicans put it forward because they wanted power in the Supreme Court. Not too far in the future of that, Amy Coney Barrett is proposed as a nominee of the Supreme Court. It was the last year of a president. It was the last year of Trump. He was about to be defeated. But the Republicans went ahead and rammed the confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett through. Direct hypocrisy. When a Democrat was the president, they said, oh, we can't do this. We can't do this. Because we have to establish the precedent that a Supreme Court justice cannot be confirmed in the last year of a presidency. But when that rule applied to Amy Coney Barrett, then it was a different thing. Because it was their ox that was going to be gored. What counts for them is never principle. It's always power. And they showed it in that particular situation. This Supreme Court is an illegitimate Supreme Court. It has at least 5 justices who lied in their confirmation hearings. It has 2 justices who should never have come up for confirmation. It is a 6-3 majority because the Republicans cheated. John Fetterman said in his answers tonight that he would not try to pack the Supreme Court. I don't know where he got that from. I completely disagree with him on that. But in this respect, he's no different from Oz, who thinks this Supreme Court is just fine, and he wouldn't do anything about this Supreme Court, no matter how horrible it gets. It's already taken basic rights away from women, and as a result, women are dying all over the country already. For my money, that's reason to get rid of all 6 of the Republican justices. Anyway, you can see that I'm infuriated by all this, but you're getting the point. John Fetterman's performance in this debate context should not be determining your decision about who to vote for. It's a relatively superficial and temporary thing. If you're for public purpose, if you're for empowering democracy, you have to be in the choice between Dr. Oz and John Fetterman, then you have to be for Fetterman. Now, some people are going to say, the parties don't mean anything. The differences between the 2 parties are superficial. In the larger context of things, they are superficial. Okay, I agree. I think the Democratic Party stinks in its various positions. However, if the Republicans should take over again, they should take over the Senate again, there will be consequences. Any Supreme Court appointments or opportunities for Supreme Court appointments that come to Joe Biden in his last 2 years in the presidency, he will not have, because the Republicans will just vote, will simply decide that they're not going to vote, that they're not going to give the person a vote. They'll just wait until they beat Biden in 2024 and then get more conservative Supreme Court justices into the court to get even more than a 6-3 majority. Do you really want that? Is that insignificant to you? It's not insignificant to me. It's not insignificant at all to me. I want to pack this Supreme Court. I want to get rid of this Supreme Court and get back a progressive Supreme Court. Yes, that is a political judgment. Yes, I'm viewing the Supreme Court, okay, in a political light. But the Supreme Court is political. Its decisions are the essence of politics, and the Supreme Court justices, besides, are not accountable. If we pack the court, they will be more accountable. That will be a way of accounting, of bringing these 6 justices to account, because it will change the majority from 6-3 in their favor to 9-6 in the favor of more progressive justices. That's a way to make the Supreme Court justices accountable for their terrible decisions. And remember, their decisions are about to get even more terrible. They may very well invalidate votes for the president in certain states and have the state legislature select who will be given the electoral votes in various states. In other words, this Supreme Court is interested in destroying democracy as we have known it. So then don't tell me that's a superficial difference between the two parties. It is not a superficial difference, okay, between the two parties. And when the Republicans come in, and if they control the House, the Senate, and the Supreme Court, you can be sure Social Security and Medicare will be devastated. That is not a superficial difference between the two parties. And as lousy as the Democrats have been about the climate emergency, you can be sure that even the limited amount they have done for the climate is going to be repealed by the Republicans. Because when it comes to the climate, they deny that the problem exists. They are working assiduously for the destruction of human life on Earth, and maybe most other life too. There are differences between the two parties. That doesn't mean we should not try to change or get rid of the Democratic Party. We should. But this election right now isn't the time to do that. I'll tell you how to do that. You do that by teaching people to vote against the candidates who are running with the most money, regardless of party. Disqualify the candidates who are running with the most money by making that a litmus test and voting against them when it comes down to voting. If you would religiously do that and make that the only criterion, I guarantee that within 2 years, you will see enormous changes in how the senators vote and in how the representatives vote. If they know they're going to be thrown out if they raise the most money and get the most financial support, they will not seek that financial support. They will seek other kinds of support. Now, I've been advocating for that since last fall. I first started doing it in November of last year. It's gotten only a little momentum over that time. People don't want to organize collectively to do something simple. They've got a million reasons why that can't work. But the real reason is that they are unwilling to come together and do something simple. They have a million excuses why they would rather do something else. One of the excuses is that the electoral system doesn't work. Well, what I'm telling you here is that there is a way to make it work. And that is by dumping the corruption. And the corruption is the big money in politics. We can't wait for laws to be passed to get the big money out of politics because the representatives are benefiting from those laws. We can't have laws that would outlaw this corruption until we end the corruption ourselves. Then we can pass laws that would stop it from coming back. But until that time, we have to stop it through our organization and our voting. That is the only way to go forward. Anyway, getting back to the decision between John Fetterman and Dr. Oz, I hope I've explained why the decision should go to Fetterman and not to Oz, and that the result of this particular debate, which I freely admit I was very disappointed in, the result of this particular debate doesn't matter one jot, not one bit, not at all. Because even if Fetterman proves dysfunctional, the way the politics are shaping up, the choice of Shapiro for senator then will still leave us in a much better position than if we elected Oz now, because Fetterman can't speak straight yet, can't talk straight yet. So I hope you're all clear on that. I did my best to lay the logic out as clearly as possible. I'm now going to take a few minutes to look at your comments while I was doing that. Okay. I also want to mention, of course, don't get discouraged by this debate. There's lots of evidence that the Republicans can be defeated because the surveys have not been taking into account the higher registration of minorities and women due to the efforts of organizers and to much greater percentages of independent women who are very much opposed to what the Supreme Court did. Women registered in very, very heavy numbers, heavier than the numbers given to them in the polls, in the surveys. In other words, the surveys did not have representative samples because the polling companies did not make adjustments for the heavier registrations from minorities and from women. We think this year the polls are distorted. They're not showing good results now, and that actually Democrats will surprise. That the final results are going to surprise. So hang in there, continue to donate, continue to work, okay, continue to talk. It's essential that the fascists be defeated. There's no doubt that they are fascists. And why do we fight fascists? We don't fight fascists because we expect to win. We fight the fascists because they are fascists, as Chris Hedges has said. What about the fact that the people we think who are non-fascists have now gotten us into a war that is threatening World War III, perhaps by accident? Okay, all I have to say about that is I recognize that it's happened, but I don't want to allow that to throw us into the arms of the fascists, because we are not likely to get rid of them anytime soon. And if we don't get rid of them anytime soon, we're going to be doomed by the climate emergency anyway. We have to defeat fascism to have a chance against the climate emergency. We have to assume that we'll have time, still have time to end the climate emergency, because we aren't going to have a nuclear war now. That people will pull us out of it. Now, I believe that some people who are not looking for nuclear war, they may be looking for war, but they're not looking for nuclear war, and they will oppose it inside. Okay? I think the military knows how terrible it would be, and that they are against it, and they're working against it now. They're working to foreclose the possibility of a dirty bomb. They are working to reduce the chances that we will get to World War III. They are already starting to pull us back. I think their efforts to do that will continue. I don't think World War III is going to happen. And we have to bet on that anyway, because it's our only chance of our escaping from the climate emergency. And we must do that to have any kind, a future. So that's my reasoning. That's my logic. I hope to God you see it. Kay says Fetterman did the best he could. I completely agree. Lana Dell says hi to Gina Marie. Kay Ryan says, if I were in Pennsylvania, I would love to vote for Fetterman. Yeah, me too. Lana says, watching on my TV. And Dolores says, Fetterman is the betterman. Yeah, he is. That's a good slogan. Fetterman is the betterman. Kay says, yes, he is, Dolores. Sandy says, hello, Dolores, Kay, and Teresa, Joe, and Bonnie. Thank you, Sandy. Sandy says, shared. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
And Bonnie says, hi, Sandy. Kay says, I shared on FB. Thank you, Kay. Dolores says, hi, Sandy. Sandy sends a heart. Kay says, no, Oz. Sandy says, Oz is a dog killer. There's something seriously wrong with a person who can torture animals. Sandy, that may well be. But more important than that is, I think Oz is a people killer also. Because I think his policies are going to kill people. Sandy says, John is a real person with real problems, so he gets it. Well, real people with real problems don't always get it, I have to say. But I think John does get it. I agree that I believe he gets it. Kay says, yes, Sandy. Lana says, watching on the TV, shared. Sandy says, hi, Lana. Sandy says, Oz is a quack. Yeah, I know. And Kay says, hi, LSNS. Not sure who LSNS is. Maybe that's Lana, but you just pushed the S's instead of the A's. Yeah, she says Lana. Sandy says he gets paid by other quacks. Kay says, I voted a straight Dem ticket in Ohio, but not holding my breath. Nan Whaley sounds good, but this is piece of shit, Ohio. Somebody else who's in trouble is Tim Ryan, of course, because Trump is supporting J.D. Vance. I'll tell you, I don't like Tim Ryan. He's too goddamn centrist for me. But here we are talking about someone who's a member of the emerging fascist party versus someone who at least is not a fascist and who is a union man and who will not at least be voting to lock us up in concentration camps. That's pretty important. Sandy says, I don't see Oprah supporting Oz. She supposedly discovered him because he was her doctor. Yeah, I don't see Oprah supporting Oz either, Sandy. I had that same thought earlier today. Where is Oprah in support of Oz if he's so wonderful? Kay says, Fetterman sounds good in my opinion. Sandy says, if he's okay cognitively, there should not be a problem. According to his doctor, he is okay cognitively. He's not okay speech-wise, but he is okay cognitively. Sandy said he could write down what he wants to say and have someone read it for him. He could. He could have done that, by the way, if they had had the Lincoln Douglas style of debate instead of this stupid TV style debate that they've been having. Sandy says Shapiro is not bad. Kay says, yes, Sandy seems good. Sandy says they can't discriminate against Fetterman because of his speech. He could use a device. He can type what he wants to say, and it speaks for him. I know. Says Democrats were responsible for the longest filibuster in American history in 1964 than when they held up the Civil Rights Act for 75 days. That's right. But remember, those Democrats are dead. And the Democrats right now want to get rid of the filibuster, or at least say that they do. So what is the relevance of pointing to the fact that Southern Democrats, racists, operating in 1964, had the longest filibuster ever? They are a reason why we should get rid of the filibuster. And the Democrats, at present, many of the Democrats, a majority of Democrats, are in favor of getting rid of the filibuster. Says Trump won 2020. No, he didn't. He did not win in 2020. Stop denying reality. Says 81 million votes, losers. No one trusts you. Ukraine was supposed to happen under Hillary. No one trusts me? I don't know. I think most of the people here trust me pretty well. At any rate, I agree Ukraine was supposed to happen under Hillary. I agree with you about that. And one of the reasons why you have why you have Ukraine now is because Biden appointed Hillary's team to run the State Department. These are Hillary's people. Hillary's people, okay, and Biden's people, okay, and Madeleine, okay, and Madeleine's people. Sandy Degg says Stephen Hawkins was brilliant. Stephen Hawking. Okay, Stephen Hawking was brilliant. He couldn't speak, but he found a way to communicate. But Fetterman can do the same. I think so, but Fetterman's got a temporary problem, according to his doctors. I mean, the problem will probably be mostly gone, if not entirely gone, in 6 months. But during the 6 months, he'll be able to use technology to communicate. And he doesn't go on the job until the beginning of January. Bernusky said Republicans had the Senate. It was their right not to vote for him. Well, Bernusky, I'm sorry, it might have been their legal right. I'm not saying it wasn't their legal right. What I am saying is that the norms of the Senate and of the United States up to that time were that the president got to nominate somebody that came to the Supreme Court with the advice and consent, of the Senate. And in the whole previous period, no Senate denied a nominee of the president the vote except for McConnell's Senate in 2016. That was the only time it happened because the Republicans said it was their right, their legal right, not to vote for him. So let me tell you something else, Bernusky. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. We have had court packing in the history of the United States only once before. But court packing is perfectly legal according to the Constitution. So to those who say the Democrats should not be packing the court because that was against the norms that have obtained for most of the Republic, they're full of crap because it's the Democrats' legal right to pack the court. Yes, I fully agree. The Democrats, I fully agree. Okay, the Republicans did what was legal. And what I'm urging is for the Democrats to do what's legal and don't worry so much about the norms of the Senate. Barnusky said they never cheated. They followed the rules of the Senate. The rules of the Senate are cheating. The Constitution says that the Senate is to be governed by majority rule, not by a frickin' filibuster. The Senate formed its own rules because they didn't want to allow the majority to rule in the Senate. So they handcuffed themselves. What I'm saying above is that from the standpoint of the norms of the Senate, the Republicans cheated. They violated those norms. I am saying it is perfectly appropriate for the Democrats to restore the balance by themselves violating the norms of the Senate. Barnusky says that elections have consequences. You guys lost, we won, get over it. I'm over it. I want to pack the court because elections have consequences. You guys lost and we won. So quit talking against court packing. It's perfectly legal. Sandy says, exactly, though, Joe, the justices need term limits. And by the way, we can impose term limits too, and that would be perfectly legal. Let's do it now. Let's do it now. Right now. In the time period between now and the end of the year, when the Democrats still have control of both houses, let them enact term limits and let them pack the court during this period of time. Let's not waste any more time. Okay, Ryan. So if Ron DeSantis expands SCOTUS and picks the justices in 2025, you'll be fine with that. No, Bernusky, I will not be fine with that at all from a political point of view, but I will agree with you that that would be perfectly legal for Ron DeSantis to do. Perfectly legal. And it would be perfectly legal for the Democrats to do that right now. And why would that be better? Because Ron DeSantis might not win in 2025. And the Republicans might not win in 2025, especially if Democrats pack the court right now. And the country gets to see what the results of packing the court with progressive Democrats would be. Maybe if the country saw that, they would say, hey, let's not be so quick to vote for Ron DeSantis. By the way, understand Ron DeSantis did not do too well tonight against Charlie Crist. The former Republican, the real Republican, not the Trump Republican. Bernusky, if they have the majority in the Senate, they don't have to give his nominee a vote. Who's they in this instance, Bernusky? Maybe Ron DeSantis will pack the Supreme Court in 2025. Maybe. It's perfectly legal. Bernusky, I don't vote for the Democrats 100% of the time because the other party is bad. When the situation is appropriate, I'm happy to vote for the Green Party. I'm happy to vote for third party candidates in the appropriate situation. I would have been for voting for Kenneth Mejia, okay, in LA this year, whether he ran as a Democrat or whether he ran as a Green Party candidate. I liked him when he's a Green Party candidate. I like him when he's a Democratic candidate. But Kay, if Bernusky wants to stay here, he belongs here. I don't at all mind debating Bernusky. Fetterman just gave Republicans that Senate seat with his performance. Well, we'll see about that, Bernusky. If you got rid of political corruption, you would have only one party Republican rule. And I don't support one party rule, even if it's the good party. Bernusky, you're crazy. Everybody in the Republican Party is bought and paid for. And Mike says, MAGA us versus us, hashtag Trump train. And Mike says, love your red hat, got to support MAGA. I'm glad you love my red hat, but my red hat is a red beret for Medicare for all, Mike. It has nothing to do with MAGA. Sandy says, I agree, Oz is a people killer. Right on, Joe. Attracting paid trolls. I guess you made it into the big show. Kay says, I'm going to bed, but I love you all. Thank you, Joe. Have a good night, Kay. Folks, it is time for me to sign off also because I have a full day a full day of streams coming up tomorrow. So good night, everybody. And thank you for coming, including you too, MAGA trolls.